Last weekend was certainly a time of celebration here at St. John's, and it was wonderful to see so many people in the cathedral and to come together and reaffirm our community. And sort of picking up on that theme as we continue forward in this season after the Epiphany, we have some very powerful lessons about how community reaches out to the world around us. So our first lesson is that extremely evocative scene from Isaiah, where he has this mystical vision and there's smoke filling the temple, and cherubim and seraphim are flying around, and they say the words, "Holy, holy, holy, Lord God Almighty," those words that we sing every Sunday as part of the Sanctus. And it ends, or culminates really, with the presence of the Lord saying, "Who shall we send out to the world to speak truth?" And Isaiah says, "Here I am, send me." And such a powerful way to step up to the plate and to take ownership over our vocation as Christians or as witnesses to the faith. And then piggybacking right on that, in the gospel, we have Jesus' encounters with some of his earliest apostles as they are out fishing and having a lot of trouble getting any kind of a catch. And he gives them some really rather unhelpful advice, actually, to put the nets in on the other side, which shouldn't make any difference. But of course, in the miraculous nature of Jesus Christ, he's showing them that by following Christ's example, that we will always have richness and bounty in our lives. And then, of course, they immediately drop their nets and follow Christ. So that idea of following Christ's example and being lights in the world around us those ideas will weave their way through this entire service. We will begin the service with the metrical, the hymn version of what those cherubim and seraphim were saying in Isaiah's presence. "Holy, holy, holy, Lord God Almighty," with that very familiar tune of Nicaea. We've talked about this in these videos before, that it starts off melodically spelling a major triad, the home base triad of D major. This was a hymn tune that Dykes, who was the organist choir master of York Minster Cathedral in the northern part of England, he wrote that tune specifically for these words, and it's thought that he was trying to picture the Trinity by using the notes of that triad as the opening notes of the melody. There's also a little bit of an indication of his intentions because he named the tune Nicaea, and of course that harkens back to the Council of Nicaea, which is what gave us the Nicene Creed. At the offertory, the choir will be singing a piece by the African-American female composer Undine Smith Moore, "We Shall Walk Through the Valley in Peace." And it says, if we trust that Jesus shall lead us, then we can walk in peace. And that idea of discipleship, but always being accompanied with Christ's presence. It's a really lovely and very comforting setting of those words. At the communion, the choir will be singing a very effusive setting of some very old text, a poem by Alcuin of York, who was part of the Charlemagne court. He was very popular, seems to be a really likable guy, living in the 8th century. And he wrote this prayer: "Eternal light shine in our hearts, eternal goodness deliver us from evil, eternal power be our support, eternal wisdom scatter the darkness of our ignorance." And in this setting, by the American composer Leo Sowerby, who was doing most of his composing in the 50s and 60s of the 20th century, we have sort of that mid-century modern take on that prayer with all these very rich jazz-inflected harmonies. We'll follow that with a hymn that is newer to us, but not maybe as new as you think. The text is, "They cast their nets in Galilee just off the hills of brown." And it really talks about that, the gospel lesson, about how the disciples, many of them were first fisher folk, and how they encountered Christ on the Sea of Galilee. And this tune is unmistakably of 20th century or modern conception. It was written by David McKinley Williams, who was a longtime organist choir master of St. Bartholomew's Church in New York City. And although it feels pretty breezy and contemporary, this was actually one of the tunes that was commissioned by the hymnal committee in 1940 for the 1940 hymnal and was brand new when that hymnal came out. So it still has that freshness, though, and freshness of appeal. Very short word, Unjin and I will both be accompanying the treble choir this weekend on the Three Choir Festival, which is being hosted this year by Christ Church in Charlotte. So our trebles and Unjin and I will be out, but we will be welcoming back a familiar face indeed with Alvin Blunt, who will be here playing for our services and leading the choir. And we hope that you will enjoy spending some time with Alvin.